Our firm practices in the areas of personal injury, medical malpractice, and legal malpractice. So our approach to a case is, in all situations, we are thorough in terms of preparing for trial, because that's how you get the best settlements. It's always best to settle a case, but you don't get the best settlements unless you show the other side that you're serious about pursuing the case and making the best presentation.
The Levine v. Inn at Morro Bay case was a very interesting case. So essentially the basic facts of the case is that our client was walking at the inn at night, and while she was walking there was a step that was pretty much not lit, and so she tripped over that step and fell and severely injured herself. Slip and fall cases are arguably more difficult than, let's say, car accident, rear-ender cases. You have a big liability issue there. It's tougher to show that the defendant was negligent in a slip and fall case.
We got very lucky in this case because when I sent the photographs to our expert that handles, the investigations and stuff, he said, "Yeah, this looks really familiar." And he pulled his old files up and found that he had a case he had worked on 5 years earlier in which somebody fell the exact same steps. But the difference was that those steps, before they remodeled, had metallic paint to give you a visual cue that you were coming up on some steps. When they remodeled, they didn't put the paint there. So one of our theories was that, well, they obviously knew it was a problem because they wouldn't have had metallic paint there in the first place, and then they remodeled and negligently didn't put something else there. MotionLit was a very important part of settling this case. We did the animation pre-trial. We did it for settlement purposes, as well as if we didn't settle the case, we would have used it at trial. But you can explain how somebody, tripped and fell and stumbled, but when you do an animation, it brings it to life, and that's really effective because it just shows basically the horror of the whole thing, and all the way up until her head hits the concrete, and you see that concrete coming up at her, and then everything goes blank. You really understand what she went through when you see something like that.
We believe that this gave the defense a taste of what was to come if we proceeded to trial. We had to litigate this case pretty close to trial, and we were ultimately able to settle the case for $400,000.
I believe that you have to have those kind of animations to persuade the defense counsel that when they go to trial, they picture themselves looking at the jury who's looking at the animation, and that's a lot different than just looking at a witness describing what they experience. They get more nervous about the case when they see that the plaintiff's attorney has gone to the lengths of having animations, illustrations, and the right experts. If you have a significant case, you're not doing yourself or your client any justice unless you use animations, illustrations, and MotionLit is the best of all that I've seen, hands down. MotionLit I began using about a year ago. I had used other companies in other kinds of cases, but I became aware of them and I was impressed with their work, and so I get calls from attorneys specifically asking about, well, who did that video, or who did that animation, or who did that interview? And so when they do call me, I tell them that, if they're considering other companies, they should definitely consider MotionLit, but in my opinion, they don't need to consider any others because they're really good, and they're really fair, and they're responsible and responsive to our needs as plaintiffs' attorneys.